All right. So, hey, how's it going, Danish? All right. So before I go ahead and jump into this, want to go ahead and mention a couple things. Um, I actually went ahead, started up a Twitter that's linked to this channel. And I also started up a Facebook page for the channel as well. The links are down in the description. You'll notice that my Twitter one isn't my at isn't the same as my channel name because apparently my channel name is one character too long for Twitter to be able to fucking handle. So I did the next best thing. All right, now that I got that shit out of the way. All right, I want to go ahead and talk about the differences between the right and the left. And I'm not talking about the far left and the far right. I'm talking about the somewhat moderate and that sort of thing. Like the difference in mentality that's there that's causing this big ol' conflict that we got going on. Hey, how's it going, MA? But um I just want to go ahead and actually take a look at this and see what's going on with it. So, let's just jump right into it. All right. So, first we have to look at the difference between the overall mentality. The right has this thing that you should be judged off of, that they have this idea of individualism, where you're not being judged off of your skin color, your sexual orientation, whatever, whatnot. You're not being judged off of what you are, but you're being judged off of how you choose to act. I don't see a problem with that. The left, on the other hand, is more of a they more subscribe to that kind of group thing, to kind of that tribalism. Hey, love, how's it going? And that's where I think a lot of people really clash, is in that basic premise of ideas, because they're not compatible with each other. Because if you're going to be sitting there and breaking people into different groups, then you can't really take part in individualism. If you're going to sit there and say that that people should be judged off of what group they belong to, then that means what they're actually doing with their life, what they're saying, the actions that they take, all of that can't be ascribed to them. It has to be ascribed to the group, which is a big problem in and of itself. I'll get into that later on. But with individualism, it doesn't matter what group you're in. If you're a fucking piece of shit, you get called out for being a fucking piece of shit. That's what it is. And it doesn't sit there and necessarily reflect a group. And conversely, you can be part of a group, like a club or something like that. The club ends up doing something that's not exactly on the up and up, and that doesn't mean that you automatically get lumped in. Whereas with groupthink, that's a completely different story. It means that if you're part of that group, that means you have to agree with everything else that everyone else in the fucking group believes. So if you got one person in a group that thinks something like Hitler did nothing wrong, then that means everyone else in the group has, by way of groupthink, has to believe that. And I'll go ahead and pull a word from the leftists on this. That is problematic ways of thinking, because that is blatantly untrue. It is patently false. So that's one big difference there, is the individualism aspect of it. Now, another difference between the right and the left. is the right thinks you should be free to express your ideas and opinions without the risk of, losing your job. Basically a heckler's veto. That, or, getting arrested also, or the government harassing you, like what the IRS was doing to conservative groups, sitting there and just auditing them over and over and over again until they went bankrupt from it. Or violence or threats of violence being used to keep you from espousing your ideas. Antifa, anyone. Whereas with the left, they believe in, rhetoric over critical thinking. So that means if you say that people, this is kind of hard. This is kind of hard to actually go through because it's a rabbit hole just full of bullshit. They're basically saying that they should be able to load one-sided conversations or debates by way of, outnumbering the opponent, constantly interrupting them when they're in the middle of making a point, verbal and physical threats. I remember with what happened with Ben Shapiro on an interview that he did where someone actually threatened him. Or running out the clock without any evidence to support their claims, and then at the end of it, sit there and say, well, here's the facts of the matter, and then ending it out, completely nullifying any debate or discussion that was just had. And MA brings up a good point that both sides actually display a little bit of groupthink. Like the right does that as well. And they don't really appreciate an individual unless they subscribe to said groupthink. That is true to a degree. But when you look at how the right treats someone who disagrees with them versus how the left treats someone who disagrees with them, you got a bit of a difference there. There's a massive disconnect between the two. Like, yeah, the right might sit there and jeer at the person or something like that. Maybe, call them a faggot or whatever. But the thing is they don't go out of their way to get the person to lose their job, typically. They don't... But the thing is also at the same time, when you look at the left, they'll go after the person's job. They'll try to get the person to lose access to their kids. They'll try to throw out false accusations against the person, knowing that they're false accusations. They'll further that shit. Just one thing after another, after another, after another. Whereas with the right, they sit there, they call you a fucking moron, and then move on. And if you keep sitting there and spouting off, they keep coming back in and saying, moron! Fucking moron! They'll do that shit. But they don't typically go after the individual. They go after the ideas more often than not. Whereas with the left, more often than not, they go after the individual instead of the ideas. So that is kind of a difference with that. But every group's going to have its own group think. It just kind of comes with the territory. The right, if you look at a lot of the people on the right, they're usually pretty open to an open debate. And they want the debate to be on level footing. They want it to be fair, where both parties get equal amount of time to talk, to bring up their different points, to discredit the other person, whatever, whatnot. But again, like I said with the left, they like to load their debates. I mean, go ahead, take a look on mainstream media. Whenever they have a quote-unquote debate, it's always 3 or 4 leftists versus 1, maybe 2 right-leaners. And the leftists are able to basically shout over, but the thing is when you go ahead and see that whenever you see someone on the right, it's usually a one-on-one thing or a two-on-two. The scales are balanced. So that right there to me shows who has more confidence in their arguments. The right also tends to go after facts before feelings, whereas it's the opposite with the left. But the thing is when you go ahead and you actually look at the arguments being presented, with the left, it tends to be arguments from a perspective of feeling, whereas with the right, it tends to be a perspective of more, fact-based and science-based. Which is funny because the right is associated with being religious and so on and so forth, yet they're more willing to let science speak for itself than the left, who tries to manipulate science the same way that the Catholic Church does. So, that's interesting in and of itself. Yeah, well, MA, we're not in the 90s now, are we? It's 2017. Don't know if you got the memo. But the thing is there's been a massive shift, and MA, I will get to that massive shift that happened. But when you look at a lot of the right, they're kind of wanting to keep government as far out of things as possible. And I'm talking about people arguing on the right. I'm not talking about the actual party of the right. I'm not talking about conservative necessarily. I'm talking about people that are making these arguments against the left. When you look at the arguments of the left and the arguments of the right, the left is wanting the government to basically come in and make everything that they don't like illegal. But the thing is when you go ahead and take a look at the mentalities, they're very fucking different. Basically, the leftists at this point are sitting there and wanting to run to Big Daddy government, whereas the people on the right are wanting government to stay the fuck out of it. Because we've seen how government getting a whole bunch of that. We see the government, when they get a lot of power and a lot of authority, and you give them power over speech and ideas, well, that's when you actually end up with dictatorships. That's when you end up with Nazi Germany. That's when you end up with, your Stalins. With what was his name? The guy in China. Forget his fucking name. Whatever. But that's when you get these dictators. Yeah, it is 2017. I did get the memo. But the memo says you can't go ahead and look back. I was actually talking about the arguments now, and I'm talking about where we're heading in the future by looking at how history has gone in the past. MA. But when you look at the left, another big thing that you see is they want equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. They say they want equality of opportunity, but even when they get equality of opportunity, they say that's not enough, that the outcome has to be the same, or else somehow a person didn't have the same opportunity, which is absolute bullshit. The right believes in meritocracy with equality of opportunity. They want everyone to have the same opportunity. But if you're sitting there making different choices, guess what? Oh no, we can look at how Republicans were morons before 2017. And I'm going to get to that. Just chill. Chill, MA. Chill. But the thing is when you go ahead and you look at this, a lot of the leftist thinking is actually more along the lines of the thinking that lead to dictatorships. Whereas the right kind of wants to preserve where we're at. And I can't blame them, because the thing is the more we, quote unquote, progress, the less freedom everyone is having. And the more freedoms are being focused into individual groups. The majority is actually being suppressed for the minority. There were other times in history that this happened. Basically, any monarchy was when you saw this. You had other brutal dictatorships that have done this. And it really fucking sucks, because it's really fucking hard. But the thing is when you actually are taking a look at how these groups are trying to go about getting their change. How many right-wing violent riots have there been? I mean, if you include Charlottesville, I've only heard of one. But it seems like we can't go for more than a couple of months without having some violent left-wing riot that happens. And with Charlottesville, it was, oh, well, you know, the right wing sitting there and fighting was bad, but the left can go ahead and go in and attack people out of nowhere, show up with weapons and shit, and we'll make excuses for them. Even when there's no right-wing presence, they're allowed to go ahead and throw their toys out the damn pram. Fuck. It's annoying. It shows where the actual mentality is. Basically, if we agree with you, we will make every fucking excuse under the sun, no matter how unrealistic, to protect these people. I mean, take a look at By Any Means Necessary. The name itself is chilling. But the thing is what they actually spread, the things that they actually say, the ideas that they espouse are some of the most hateful out there. But the left is perfectly fine with that, because the hatred in the left's eyes are going in the right direction. Whereas with the right, they're wanting to separate themselves from actual white nationalists. They're sitting there and saying, look, I don't agree with that shit. I don't believe you should be judged on the color of your skin or what gender you are, whatever, whatnot. The vast majority of people on the right will fucking say that, and they do put that into practice. Whereas with the left, it's the, well, you have no say in this because you're a man, or you have no say in this because you're white, or you have no say in this because you're not Muslim, or you don't have any say in this because you're Christian. Blah, 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 all the way down the fucking line. The left is all about taking away your voice if you are not parroting what they're saying. But the fact of the matter is I'm sitting here and I'm looking at what you're actually seeing. You know, it's all like, what are the actions actually being taken? Because words are cheap. You can sit there and say that you're for equality. You can say that you're against some sort of bigotry. And it doesn't matter what side of the argument you're on. If you're sitting there and saying that you're against this shit, but then go out and do it yourself, that's a fucking problem. And Danish, I don't disagree with you there. I think they are two sides of the same party. There's a reason why I'm a centrist. I do tend to be a little bit right-leaning right now, but that's because the thing is they're going to consider me alt-right no matter what. The left is. I get that shit leveraged against me all the fucking time. They think that just because I'm not one of these people that thinks that it should be mandatory that you should have to hire a certain percentage of minorities in your own personal fucking business. They think that that makes me a white supremacist. Because I don't think you should have to hire someone based off of their gender or sexual orientation or anything along those lines. Because I think you should have to only hire someone if they're perfectly qualified for the job and hire them on your terms. For some odd reason, that makes me a heteronormative, blah, 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 blah. Every fucking insult that the left can fucking throw at me has been thrown at me. But the thing is I'm one of those people, I don't think that the left has it 100% wrong. But also at the same time, I don't think that the right has it 100% right. There are issues on both sides where their arguments fall flat. So the thing is when I'm sitting here and I'm talking about something like this, I'm looking at this from the outside in. Because I honestly really don't belong to the right. I really don't belong to the left. And if you guys go ahead and take a look at my Twitter that I just started up, how did I start it off? By fucking going after Trump. Because of the whole FCC bullshit happening on the 15th. First fucking shit that I did. Of course, there were also some people that were being completely and totally stupid and making completely unfounded claims or completely debunked claims. So, of course, I'm going to go after them. But it's all like, if you're going to go after Trump, go after the shit where he's actually screwing up. You don't have to make shit up for this. He's fucked up several times anyway. Go after him for that shit. Don't sit there and make up these cockamamie bullshit stories meant to get an emotional reaction from people. But one thing that I've noticed about the right is while they do have some rhetoric, it's usually counter rhetoric to the left. But for the most part, they sit there and go, look, here's the information, make up your own goddamn mind. I mean, if you're sitting there, you're looking at Milo, yeah, he's very rhetorical. He is. He says a lot of the same things over and over and over and over again. Ben Shapiro says some things over and over and over again. But typically, it's whenever, like with Ben Shapiro at least, he'll sit there and he'll say the same things over and over again when people keep saying the same stupid shit over and over and over again. It gets really difficult after a while when someone's saying literally the exact same thing time and time and time again to argue with it in completely different ways while still staying factual. But the fact of the matter is when people sit there and see me defending Trump, they think I'm some sort of neo-Nazi. When they see me go after Trump when he does screw up, all of a sudden I'm a special fucking snowflake. It's all like, you do realize that I don't have to exist in either one of your fucking groups, right? You do realize that you don't have a duopoly on this. There are people that fall outside of it. In fact, the vast majority of us do. Almost no one fully agrees with the right or the left. But people feel pressured to identify as one or the other, lest they be attacked by both. It really fucking sucks. If I was going to be attacked by a group, I would prefer to be attacked by the right, because once they see that you're not exactly, against them, that you might disagree with them on a couple of things, but you agree with them on the shit that they're patently right on, they tend to back the fuck off. Whereas with the left, if you disagree with them on one fucking thing, they just start hammering it home. Not to mention, I don't really, authoritarianism doesn't jive well with someone like me. I have real problems with authority to begin with. Hey, Black Sand, how's it going? But I have some real problems with authority to begin with. I honestly think that government needs to be as small as possible. That's how I look at this. But the thing is right now, the right is the one that's really trying, at least on the surface, to fight against this shit. Whereas the left is saying, oh, we want the government to regulate this. We want it to regulate that. We want them to say you have to do this. We want them to say you have to do that. We want them to be able to force you by way of law or monetary deprivation or what the fuck ever to say what we want you to fucking say. But the fact is with the right, there are some people in there that will do that. But they are the vast minority. Therefore, it goes nowhere. A lot of the people on the right are saying, fuck the government. A lot of the people on the right didn't vote for Hillary, not because they necessarily liked Trump better, but there were two primary factors. One, they wanted to piss off the leftists who were sitting there and constantly berating them, calling them worthless pieces of shit, insulting them, lying about them, all of this crap based off of what these people are. And I think that it's funny that Hillary underperformed with the female vote. That showed that there are a lot more women that are seeing the damage that cunts like Hillary Clinton are doing to gender relations. Are they voting that way for their own self-interest? Yes, of course they are. But I dare you, I challenge you to find at least one person that has voted in any election ever that did not vote for their self-interests. Even these fucking cucks on the left, the white guys that are sitting there and yelling, "You're a fucking white male!" Those guys, even they're voting for their self-interest by voting for a cunt like Hillary because they think they're going to get laid because of it. That's it. That's all. It's all based off of self-interest. You vote for the person who you think is going to either fuck you over less or actually do right by you. The average American voter at this point isn't expecting any of these politicians, not a single one of them, to do right by the John Q. Everyman. They are not expecting that. So now it comes down to who's going to fuck us over less. And in this case, it was Trump. But the fact is at this point, when you look at the left versus the right, a lot of people now are kind of getting that, into that dig in your heels mindset. So they're looking where the most pressure is coming from, the most pressure that is going to affect them as an individual. Not affect the entire country as a whole, but where it's going to affect them as an individual. And that is a reason why a lot of people are facing their back to the right and digging in their heels against the left. Because they see where it's fucking going. People tend to not like authoritarianism. The only people that are for authoritarianism are the people that know that they can make it to the top of the chain so that they're not going to get the ill effects. Or the ones that are deluding themselves into thinking that somehow that authoritarianism won't turn on them. And that's where we are now. Because when you see people go out and ask people on the left at these different, at these different rallies and so on and so forth, you see someone going out there and asking the hardball questions. The leftists, all of a sudden, can't use their rhetoric because they have to give a specific answer, not a vague platitude. And all of a sudden, what happens? All of a sudden, they start tripping over their own words. They start contradicting themselves with every fucking sentence. Whereas on the right, they're all like, no, here's what my beliefs are on this. Boom, 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 boom. And they have their talking points on all these things. They're able to give fairly detailed answers. Yes, there's going to be some vagary there. But the more specific of a question you ask, the more specific of an answer you're going to get from the right. With the left, the more specific of a question that you ask, the more people you're going to have dogpiling on you for daring to ask a question that can't be answered by rhetoric. And the thing is, at this point, people are being forced to take a side. Because if you're one of those people that's like me, that would much rather just stay the fuck out of it, in all honesty, that would rather just stay the fuck out of it and just go on with living your life. You're not able to do that anymore. Because they're starting to bring this shit into your home. They're starting to bring it into your place of work. They're starting to bring it, hell, when you're driving your fucking car. When you're walking down the side of a street. When you're not interacting with another fucking person. If someone looks in at you and sees you doing something that they don't like, they all of a sudden want that illegalized to where the next time they look in and see you doing it, they could go ahead and sick the law on you. My last stream, guess what? That is a symptom of this. Authoritarianism isn't something that's just there. Never does authoritarianism come in like that. It's slow and gradual. It's the erosion It requires the erosion of any sort of self-value. It requires the slow erosion of individualism. But the fact of the matter is now's the time where we got to take a stand. Because the thing is, honestly, at this point, I'm seeing us going into a civil war. I'm having to update me sitting there and saying, yeah, there's probably about a 10% chance of it. We're at about a 50-50 chance here. And we're starting to see the right starting to fully wake up, starting to rev up and match pace. But the problem is with the right, as we've seen in the past, they're slow to start. They're that slumbering giant. They're slow to start, but eventually they'll match you and then surpass you. We've seen that over and over and over again. Every time the right's actually had to rev its engines, it's always blown the left out of the fucking water. But the fact is at this point, we're seeing the right starting to rev its engine. And the thing is because these little leftist fuckstains don't actually know the real history of our country. Because they've been taught a false history. They don't understand what's coming over that horizon. The thing is I don't want to be a part of that because I'm eventually going to get targeted. I know I'm going to get fucking targeted because the thing is I have no problems being critical of people in power. I have no problems with that. In fact, they tend to get the most ire from me. So the reason why I concentrate on the left right now is because when you look at it, honestly, who are the ones that hold the power? On the surface, you would think that Republicans hold the power at this point. But they don't. Because that would require all the Republicans working together at the same time. That's not happening. Because you've got these Republicans that are trying to gear up for when the Democrats go ahead and get back in. So they don't get voted out. So they're purposely trying to block some actual positive shit, yet they're pushing all the negative shit. That D or R next to a politician's name means absolutely fucking nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. Why is that? Because the thing is that does not mean that they have your best or worst interests at heart. All it means is that they pledge loyalty to one group or another. That's all that letter means. Values? Yeah, there's no such thing as Republican values or Democratic values anymore. None. There are no values. Those have been eroded away for a long fucking time. So at this point, we need to protect critical thinking, because that's what's under assault. And once you lose the ability to critically think, you're dead in the water. Anyone else that comes along that can critically think will be able to raffle stomp you. Hey Harry, how's it going? And so we're seeing a very interesting situation happen. People that would normally be staying out of the fight are feeling the need to throw their hat into the ring. But the thing is the people that are throwing their hat into the ring are siding with the right now. These also tend to be people that have actually looked at history and know how this shit goes down. And they're not so much looking at the right as allies to them, but they have the enemy of my enemy is my friend mentality. So they may not fully agree with the right. Like me, I don't fully agree with the right. I don't. But the right, at the very least, has my best interest at heart at this point in time, whereas the left wants to put me 6 feet under. The left decided arbitrarily that I am public enemy number 1 because of the situation of my birth. Why in the fuck would I side with people like that? Why in the fuck would I side with people that want me dead? And I'm meaning that literally. I'm not using hyperbole here. The left wants me to have so few rights that I'm not even allowed to defend myself verbally against physical attack. If you think that that's not going to result in my death, then either you don't have 2 functional brain cells to rub together, or you're a leftist. Oh wait, same thing. And MA brings up a good point. It's the job of the parent, namely the father, to teach children critical thinking, whereas with the mother typically teaches the kid emotional intelligence. But the thing is we've removed so many fathers from the household. We've allowed that to happen. So what happens? Critical thinking skills start to become non-existent. That's when you end up getting shit like gender studies courses. That's when you get the feels before reals mentality. That's where we're at. But yeah, like in all honesty, there's really not much of a comparison at this point between the left and the right. Because we're like looking at how they hold themselves, how they act, what they're saying, the morals and values that they at least espouse are night and day different. Now, you don't have to be a person that agrees with the right. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if you're on the left, you have to ask yourself, why are you a leftist? You have to ask yourself that question. And don't sit there and say, well, because I'm against racism. Because I can sit there and show you that the left, and I can show you to the point where, as long as you have your brain still existing in reality, the left is the most racist group out there. It is the most racist, sexist, just, they have a phobia of everything. Everything! They have an irrational fear of air conditioning, for Christ's sake. Because when you think of the left, what groups do you think of? You think of feminism. You think of Black Lives Matter, by any means necessary. The Democrats, Hillary Clinton and her ilk. When you think of the right, you think Donald Trump. You think white nationalists. And that's it. But that's because that's all the news talks about. More than likely, you don't think of the working class, the working poor. small business owners, you know, the lifeblood of our fucking country's economic situation. The less small businesses you have in America, the less America you fucking have. But the fact is at this point, there is absolutely no excuse for you being a leftist while trying to claim any level of moral scruples. None. Because the left tried to say, oh, we're not anti-white. Yet they get behind shit like kill all men. And then change it to kill all white men. They publish articles that sit there and say straight black men are the new white men of the black community. Wow. Because if you go ahead and you look at the left, almost everything they talk about has to do with gender, gender identity, race, or religion. It never has to do with fucking merit. That in and of itself is a problem. I could easily mimic the leftist philosophy at this point by sitting there and just giving you quote after quote after quote from the KKK and the Nazis. Quite literally. Whereas with the right, apparently the neo-Nazi right, if you actually look at what the right is saying, you know, the vast majority of the voices in the right, not the few fringe outliers, they're sitting there and dogging on the left for using identity politics. A lot of those people want us to stop looking at what a person is and start looking at what the person is doing. So when I sit there and I compare the right and the left, yeah, the left is always going to look bad compared to the right if they stay on this current course. And actually, no, Black Sand, what the left wants is to put men into internment camps. But I am so sick and tired of being told that because I'm white, because I'm straight, because I was raised Christian, that somehow makes it to where I owe anyone else anything. Because they don't have one of those identifiers about them. Anytime someone says that, my first words are, fuck you, I don't know anyone anything. I think my biggest gripe with the left is the progressive stack. So that's the long and the short of it. If the left gets rid of this progressive stack bullshit, and actually start saying, yeah, we believe in actual equality, for one, there wouldn't be anywhere near as many fights between the right and the left as there are. But then we might actually be able to get somewhere instead of bickering about bullshit that, quite frankly, I thought we had solved hundreds of years ago. If we've really progressed so fucking far, why are we still having this discussion about whether or not your skin color fucking matters? Here's a hint. It doesn't. I've known plenty of smart white guys. I've known plenty of dumb white guys. I've known plenty of smart black guys. I've known plenty of dumb black guys. I can go all the way through it. But this identity politics needs to fucking stop. And the only group that I'm seeing saying that identity politics is bullshit is the right. So, of course, I'm going to side with them because, quite frankly, I think identity politics is our biggest fucking problem right now. And it's the fact that identity politics even exists in the fucking first place. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to end this here. For those who came in late, I started up a Facebook group. It's just Ryu Knight of Flame on Facebook. I also started up a Twitter. It's Ryu Knight of Fire because Ryu Knight of Flame was one character too long. So feel free to go ahead and join in there, send messages, post shit. Go for it. Free form on both of them. So I'll talk to y'all later. Have yourselves a great night. Thank y'all to everyone who came for coming. Talk to y'all later. Peace.